Jackie Moretta here. So happy to be a part of this virtual conference. I hope you guys are having an amazing time so far, no matter where you're watching, if you're by yourself or with your team. I know that the value is just packed to the brim, and I'm so excited to be a part of it. So my topic today is how to keep going. And some of the lessons that I've learned within some of the hardships that I've gone through and some of the things that I've taken from how to be resilient, how to keep going when you seem really far from your goal, how to keep your spirits up, how to keep your mentality on the rise, and basically just how to keep going when times are hard, because the reality of life and this business is that it's not always going to be rainbows and sunshine. So we have to learn how to roll with the punches and just keep going and have a great time and enjoy the journey, which is so much easier said than done. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. So as I was kind of putting together this talk, I was really thinking about what are some of the things that I felt or things that I've thought, how has my mentality shifted when maybe things weren't going my way, when maybe I wasn't really getting what I wanted, or let's say in the timing that I wanted it to be, because I think that that's a big thing that I at least have struggled with, and I know many other people have too. It's, I'm doing everything that I need to do, but when is it going to happen? It's not really in my timing. So I think that it's a really, great point to point out, because we can always talk about growth and learning in the times that things are going well, but how do we act and how do we think when things aren't necessarily going our way, right? So one of the first things when I was thinking about how have I felt sometimes my self-esteem plummets. Sometimes I felt like a victim to my situation. Sometimes I've just felt frustrated and angry that things weren't going my way. Sometimes I'm asking, why is this happening to me? Sometimes I'm just not feeling happy, or sometimes I'm not feeling like myself. I'm not so sure I can do it anymore. I once was confident, but now I'm not even sure, why I'm here or if I'm doing this for the right reasons. And then I start going down all this philosophical, journey and pathway. So all of those things have definitely gone through my head, and I'm telling you that because I've genuinely experienced it, not because I'm thinking you may have. But I think it's a normal thing that everyone goes through. So one of the first things that I try to remember, and I've tried to divide this talk as some bullet points for you, but I'm really just going to be talking to you because I feel it's that type of topic. But one of the biggest things is that we tend to judge ourselves for feeling certain ways. And that's something that I could say from my personal experience, that one thing that I've altered in kind of my mindset in going through stuff is, first, I've learned that I'm always going to be going through stuff, number one. And if you haven't come to that realization that there isn't going to be a moment where you get through all this stuff and then you arrive and then your life is amazing, it's never really happens. And if you have that idea, you kind of don't understand life, and that life is filled with tests, and it's all about how you grow from it and learn from it and become better and change your mindset. So I'll kind of get to that as we keep going. But a big thing that I used to do is I would judge myself for feeling a certain way. Let's say, for example, I remember when I first got started in business, I found it so difficult for myself to make contacts and meet people. And I really just made it such a big deal in my head when it didn't need to be. So that was like one of the first things I did. But I just judged myself for not being great. And number one, that's not very realistic, because during that time I was really just learning. And I had this huge idea of like where I thought I should be, and the fact that I wasn't there got myself so down. And I just started kind of going into a tailspin often on why I wasn't where I should be, or why I hadn't done what I thought I should be able to do at this point. And I was very hard on myself. So I think that the way that you talk to yourself is a really big determining factor on if you're going to be able to keep going, because it's really good. And I think sometimes it can be confusing in culture these days where we have this hustle mentality. And I think it's really good to be tough on yourself at times, but you also have to know yourself and know your own balance. And that's not going to work for everyone. And it's not going to work for everyone if they're like that all the time. You have to be kind to yourself. And I remember one of the biggest things I learned in like managing my emotions was really just being a little bit more accepting. And sometimes that can be a challenging concept when we're so growth oriented. We don't want to accept where we're at. We want to grow to the next level. So what I would encourage you to do is kind of have a little bit of both. And I know balance kind of throws people into a whole thought process of what is balance and how to have balance, and don't overthink it. I'm just letting you know that it's kind of a combination of both. I've been able to develop the ability where I recognize where I am and I know that I want more, but I'm not going to make myself feel bad about what I haven't done or how I haven't perfected the skills that I'm trying to learn, because in the reality is that's not helping me in any way. I'm wasting energy on something that I can't change or control at that very moment. And the only thing I could do is study a little bit more, put myself in the work mode so I can, learn and have a positive outlook, which is really going to be the thing that helps me to get back on the horse and keep going with a positive outlook. So that's like one of the first things that I think has really helped me. Another thing kind of tying to that is progress in general. And I'm the type of person who has always had a mindset where I'm very extreme. If I ever did a diet, I was the type of person who was like, I'm going to lose, 10 pounds in 1 week, not a 1% each day type of mindset. And when I got started in the business, I'm going to go platinum in 6 months, or that's the end, and those type of extreme behaviors can be very fun for some people, this spontaneity and this adventure and excitement and this 100% attitude. But on the flip side of it, a lot of times it doesn't go the way that we think it's going to go, and then we end up in a negative mindset for a longer period of time, because we're like coming off the failure of not doing it in the time frame we thought, our expectation being ruined. Now we're not sure if we could do it at all. So I've learned that I have to see progress a little bit differently, and I have to always remember where I started and be a bit realistic about what's possible. And it's not to say that you can't reach wildly big goals, but it's just understanding that be kind to yourself and remember that you have to see things through the lens of your mentor. You have to really see, does this make sense? Something that was kind of eye-opening to me recently was we had some people come down to our conference in DR, and a lot of Americans were saying, wow, I can't believe that you can speak Spanish now. It's just so crazy. And, I just can't believe it. And I felt so flattered because it was really something that it's one of my more recent things that I've overcome and was a really, really big obstacle. I kid you not. I really appreciate every compliment. But it's funny because they're seeing I've lived here for 5 years, like almost 6 years. So you're seeing a journey that's been years. And what it made me realize is that people on the outside, people who love you, your mentors, they see your progress so much more realistically and so impressive compared to how you see it on the inside, like how you see your own progress, if that makes sense. So for me, it's easy for me to think that this is no big deal. I've gone slower than I should have. I should have learned how to do it faster. Or I messed this word up. It's so easier than you think for me to go down those pathways. But it's so refreshing to hear from people who see it in a positive light and remind you that actually you're doing great. And I think that that's really important, because it's really, really tempting that when you're feeling down on yourself, or when you're feeling like you haven't hit a goal as fast as you should, or you're just not really doing as great as you thought you would, or you feel like you're letting yourself down, it's really important to open up. And it's really important in those moments to lean on your association, because those are the people who are going to tell you, your mentors are going to tell you, actually, you're doing a great job. And they're going to be able to fill the gaps for you. And they're going to help you bring you back to reality and kind of give you that accountability to say, all right, you're doing great. This is how I see your progress. And I've learned that along the way. Sometimes the way I'm seeing it is a bit of a skewed view. So one of kind of going off of that, a huge point, and something that is kind of become part of my mentality as, things come up, because things are always going to come up, right? Is remembering that everything is an opportunity. And I feel like I learned that really, really early on in the business, when I was understanding that we get to create the team that we want to create. And it's all up to us, the example that we set. So I thought that that was awesome. I was like, wow, I get to literally create, the example that I want in every single area with my attitude, my dream, my work ethic, my culture on my team. And the people who are going to get started are going to follow my example. And I basically get to do that. So every time a situation would come up, I'll take, learning Spanish again. It's not necessarily the journey that I thought was maybe going to be inspiring or going to be important. I kind of just remember when I needed to learn Spanish and move here. Number one, I thought it was going to be way easier than it was. But I remember just thinking, this is kind of a waste of energy. This is not what I think is going to be impactful. This is kind of just something I need to get through right now because it's a blockage in between what I really need to do, which yes, is true. I needed to do other things within my business and just communicate with my team. But it became such an amazing part of my story about being adaptable and, being able to have a positive mentality and, working through a new skill set. Like it brought me back to that. So my point in saying it is that it became an opportunity for me because I learned to look at it that way. And we all have that ability to take something that's happening and either say, why is this happening to me? Or this is going to be an opportunity. And it becomes your story. So a huge, huge, huge pillar of this is you are building your story. And if you just like take a moment right now and think, what is the biggest challenge that I have in building my business or just my life? What is the thing that I struggle with the most that I believe is the barrier in me getting to the next level? And you think about that. And I want you to realize that that's not the thing that's going to disqualify you. It's going to be the very thing, that very limitation that you think you have is going to be the very thing that's going to be open for you to impact more people. I've seen it in my own life. I've seen it with Louise. I've seen it with Brian and Sia, Anthony, Count, Warren, Vanessa. I've seen it with all the leaders where the very thing that maybe they weren't so great at in the beginning became their biggest strength. Because I always kind of used to get a little bit confused, like, what does that even mean? But it means that you're going to have access to impact people that other people don't if you decide to work through your limitation. Mentally and physically, you get good at it. A lot of times you can get so much better than you think you can, but that becomes this access to impact people. So as things come up, as limitations you're having, like maybe let's say you've been in the business for a long time and you just feel like you're not having the success that you want. I can paint any story to be a positive one. So the way that I see your future is that you're going to come to the other side and you're going to be on stage. You're going to have gone platinum and your story is going to be like, all this time went by and I was so down on myself. I didn't believe I can do it, but I pulled myself out of it. And I decided year 10 that I was going to build the skills and I was going to start asking people how to do things that I thought I should know. And then I just decided to humble myself and make a difference. And year 10, all of a sudden we started having traction. And I'm here to say that we never gave up. And that's our story. And that will inspire this whole group of people who's in the same position as you are. And I remember thinking about things like that and saying, it's my responsibility to get to the other side. Because there's a chance that those people, that group of people, it was so tangible and real to me. Maybe I just have like a really intense imagination, but I need to impact those people. They're relying on me before they even know they're relying on me. You know what I'm saying? We have stories now in the business where we've been in the business for 11 years and decisions we made years ago are impacting people today. And I think, what if we didn't do it? What if we didn't believe? And it's so important to have that courage to believe in yourself and that you matter and that your story is important. Because one of the pitfalls when we're all kind of going through it is we start to just think it doesn't matter. And we start to think it's not going to impact people. And it doesn't make a difference. And it's your responsibility to believe, no, it actually does make a difference. What I do is going to impact people if I just believe it and if I just keep going. So that was, that having that mindset with anything that comes your way, I believe that you just become pretty much bulletproof to any situation. Yes, there's things that you're not going to be able to control. That's absolutely true. But my goal has always been, let me control the things that I can control and have faith in the things that I can't. And I mean, I wake up every day saying like things are going to work out for me. And Luis has always made fun of me. He's always said I lived in Disney World, and he's come to really like that I live in Disney World because it's come to our benefit. We've had amazing things happen to us, and I feel like the power of the spoken word has really just worked in our favor because I don't know if I've always believed I was kind of like a part of the movie or something, but I just have always thought it's going to work out. It's going to be okay. And I've had to remind myself that this is part of the story in the midst of the storm. And how good is the story going to get? So every time you have, something come up, look at it like that, right? So a few other, tips with this, really, really important parts, things that have helped me a lot, were being really immersed with my reading and my listening and the association. Basically, honoring the partnership, right? There's a reason that we say that. These things have kept me afloat. Absolutely 100%. To be able to unlock things for myself, whenever you come towards what you look at as like a blockage or something that's in your path, you need to have anchors that keep you to the ground, that keep you rock solid in the moments that you're not feeling so rock solid. And what I mean by that is I learned to live vicariously through the stories in the system. I learned to live through the successes of other people. And I would do that by listening to different people's success stories and listening to everything on the app of how people would get through things. And I would just gain so much hope from continuously listening to other people talk about what they've gone through. And it never got old. And I've listened to multiple audios over and over and over again. You have to kind of find those audios that are great for you. But that became kind of like my saving grace. And then coupling that with the reading, when you're in a spot like we've been talking about, or you have those like blocky moments, a lot of times it feels like you've reached dead ends that you don't know how to get past. And reading has been a huge part, a huge element of, for me at least, getting through them. Always having this habit to learn and read more. Whenever I find myself down or not moving forward, I think there's something I don't know. There's something either with my mindset, there's information that I need. And I've just learned to go into books and go into reading and go into learning. This is a little bit off topic, but for the longest time in my life, I struggled with my relationship with food. And I just had super disordered thinking. And ever since I was in high school, body image issues is such a common thing within women. And I remember it's really, really important to be self-aware, because I remember at some point a few years back, I started to kind of just take inventory on how I was feeling. And I started to get out of that judgment mindset that I was mentioning earlier. And I started to just kind of accept what was going on. And I remember I realized, I said, I think I actually have a real issue with how I think about food. And instead of feeling trapped by it, I remember being inspired to learn. And I remember finding all these books and information. And I remember discovering a whole new world of information that I hadn't had before. And it totally broke my bondages, bondage, I guess, of my mind. Like my mind was totally trapped in thinking certain things that just weren't the reality. And it served as a really great example for me, not just the things that I learned about food and your relationship with food, but also the fact that we don't always know everything. And it's tempting to feel at times that we know everything and that there's nothing left to learn and we're just trapped here and there's nothing we can do. And yes, so-and-so got through their situation, but they don't know my situation and everything is different for me. And it's so tempting to feel that way. But it's really, really important that you bring yourself out of it and start seeking for information, whether that be through books, through audios, or conversations that you need to have with your coach. And I've always found that really, really, really important. So kind of in finishing, I think a really, really big element to getting through and not giving up and being able to keep going, and some of the lessons I've learned, is that you've got to really, really want it. And sometimes, I know I said you have to have grace with yourself, but you also have to have that grit and intensity that you want to move forward and that you're not going to be a victim to your situation and what's going on. And you have just got to find it deep within you, the courage to move forward and the courage to keep going. And those are going to be the moments where you relate to people the most, because everyone has a different story, but everyone has had to go deep down and find the courage and strength within them to keep going, whatever it might be. And when I say keep going, there's a lot of different ways that you can look at quitting. And when I say keep going, I mean keep going with strength, with a mindset of victory, with a mindset of I'm going to win. Because there's a lot of people who don't necessarily quit on something, but they basically quit. I mean, you don't quit your job, but you don't give it your effort. You don't quit your business, but you're not really checked in. So what we're looking for is people who are checked in, who want this intensely, who are willing to dive deeper. And let me tell you, when you experience failure after failure after failure, it is really tempting to feel like maybe this isn't for me, or maybe I just shouldn't keep going, or maybe I should just listen to what's going on. And it's your job as a leader, because you have to learn how to lead yourself, to take that information and say, wait a minute, does this make sense? Is it telling me to quit all these things, or is it telling me to keep going deeper? And am I building my story around it? And I think that that's been really important, having that intensity and that desire and that drive to keep going forward. And sometimes you need to borrow that from your mentors. Sometimes you don't always have the courage and you do feel weak, and that's totally fine, but that's why we have each other. And that's why you stay plugged in, and that's why you keep learning. To kind of finish out, I think a huge element of this, which would be impossible for me to not touch on, is just having faith through it all. Whatever that means to you, you need to have faith that things are going to work out. Being able to say every day that this is going to work out for me, and regardless of the circumstance, I believe that I'm here for a reason. And I think always believing that I was in this business for a reason, and that I got connected here for a reason, and that there's no way that the sacrifice that Vinny and Dana have made wasn't for a reason. I connected with it, and I know that I'm here for a reason. I need to figure out a way to keep going. And my mindset has always been, whatever comes our way, I have the faith that it's going to work out, but I also do my part. And I'm working as hard as I can so that it works out for me, whether I need to learn more, whether I need to just have a better attitude, whether I need to work more. It's my responsibility. And hey, if it doesn't go out, come out the exact way that I wanted to after that, I just have to have the grace to understand that, okay, what is this trying to teach me at this moment? And sometimes it's been just that. I wasn't meant to, get to the next level in that moment. I didn't learn Spanish in a year. And I had to, first I felt really down on myself. And then I had to think, okay, what is this trying to teach me? One of the big things that it was trying to teach me, it was that I was really, really insecure and worried a ton about what other people thought about me. And I never, ever would have uncovered that if I would have learned Spanish perfectly right away. And it was the same thing that happened when I was learning how to contact people. I mean, sometimes it's easy to feel like, you're rejected. And I often felt like I was kind of a volunteer victim, and I felt rejected by people, and I took things like way further than they needed to be taken. And I had to learn that, first of all, maybe that's my own perception, but what's this trying to teach me? So then when I moved on to the next thing, which was learning Spanish, and I felt incredibly embarrassed from not being able to say the words properly, and I believed like I was a good communicator with people and that I could have that connection with people, and it was taken from me. I had to work really hard on not having a mental breakdown from not having confidence. And it taught me so much. It taught me that basically those things don't make you confident or not. That's the biggest learning lesson that I took from it. But thank God it happened, because I was able to realize my worth in other areas, and it took me on such a beautiful journey that, wow, I'm so glad it's happened now. Keep in mind, it's so easy to feel unqualified even to talk about overcoming challenges when you are hearing about someone else going through so much. And I remember hearing one time, I have no idea where this is from, but just because somebody has, this is the quote, like, just because somebody has a broken leg next to you doesn't mean your paper cut doesn't hurt. So essentially, your level of, suffering and pain is relative to what you've experienced. So, what your struggles are your struggles, and they're valid to you, and all that. So these are just been some of the lessons that I've learned. Listen, this is part of the journey. Like I said, get ready, because if you aren't tested in your life, you aren't doing anything great. So get excited. I know that sounds a little bit weird and very counterculture for the rest of the world, but when you're tested, you're doing something that's worth something. And if you're not, and you're just floating through life, well, you're probably not up to anything that is going to really impact too many people in the world. And when I started realizing that and started looking at it a little bit differently, these things are going to be part of my story. This is happening to me for a reason. What do I need to learn from this? Who's going to be impacted by this in the future? And I just kept being future oriented. It helped me so much to enjoy the journey. And that's what it's all about. You know, I used to have destination disease so bad, destination orientation. I always thinking about getting to the next thing, getting to the next thing, getting to the next thing. And then I would get there and then I all of a sudden manifest new problems. Maybe I just didn't feel good being in one place because I had this, thing where I thought things were going to solve my problem or goals were going to solve my problem. They weren't. It's about the journey every step of the way. And it's a daily discipline. Every single day, being able to refresh your mind, being able to reflect, being able to think, what can I do 1% better today? Because remember that progress is so much different than you think from other people on the outside, people who love you, your mentors, they're seeing how you're working. That makes all the difference. Daily discipline to put these things into context for you and not overwhelm yourself. That's half the battle. Sometimes we just go down rabbit holes, overwhelming ourselves when we don't need to. This is meant to be fun. This is fun. I'm having a blast and I got a bunch of stuff happening. We always do. Don't try to avoid the stuff. Learn how to roll with the punches and have fun. And that's it. I love you guys. Enjoy the rest of the conference and I'll see you guys soon.
This is a copyrighted program of The Collective. Powered